Thank you, gentlemen, for yielding. And, Mr. Speaker, I rise to urge passage of my bill, H.R. 6737, the Protecting Affordable Mortgages for Veterans Act, which is bipartisan legislation that passed the committee with a unanimous vote of 49-0. This legislation would provide a technical fix so that recently issued loans refinanced by the Department of Veterans Affairs can remain eligible for the secondary market. This fix is essential to prevent a liquidity crisis in the veterans' home loan market and ensure that the brave men and women who have served our nation in uniform have access to affordable mortgages. Through passage of this bill, we can assure that VA home loans are not adversely impacted by issues in the veterans' mortgage market created by the unintended consequences of Senate Bill 2155. The Economic Growth, Regulatory Relief, and Consumer Protection Act, Senate Bill 2155, contains some very important bipartisan reforms to protect veterans from predatory lending and deceptive marketing. These provisions of Senate Bill 2155 are now the law of the land and essential to protect the VA home loan market, but unclear timelines laid out in the legislation and the way the government National Mortgage Association, also known as Ginnie Mae, chose to implement the requirements of the new law has left an estimated 2,500 or more VA home loans boxed out of the secondary market. These mortgages are now considered orphan loans because they are no longer eligible for Ginnie Mae securitization, even though they met all federal requirements and are backed by the VA. My bill would prevent a government-triggered liquidity crisis in the VA mortgage market by fixing this problem and restoring eligibility for these orphan loans. Addressing this ensures that veteran homeowners or prospective home buyers who have earned access to the VA home loan program through their military service aren't harmed by a fluke in Senate Bill 2155. Without this bill, potential damage to the overall VA home loan market is likely because VA lenders may have to sell or finance these orphan mortgages at a loss. This would have a negative impact on the brave men and women who have served our country and deserve a path to home ownership and the American dream. If lenders aren't able to securitize VA home loans through Ginnie Mae, closing costs and borrowing costs could go up, and opportunities to borrow or refinance could go down. Mr. Speaker, veterans have some of the lowest default and foreclosure rates in the nation, and they've earned access to VA home loans through their selfless service to our country. As I mentioned earlier, it's estimated that 2,500 or more VA home loans that were issued earlier, it was May or June of this year, may now be boxed out of the market due to a minuscule legislative error. Even one VA home loan negatively impacted by a minor mistake is one too many when it comes to giving our veterans access to home ownership. That is why we must pass this bipartisan bill. I want to thank my lead bipartisan co-sponsors, Claudia Tenney of New York and Kristen Sinema of Arizona. I would also like to thank Chairman Hensarling, Ranking Member Waters, and Housing and Insurance Subcommittee Chairman Sean Duffy for supporting this important bipartisan reform. I'd also like to thank the great staff of the House Financial Services Committee for all of their help throughout this process. And they certainly have shown a tremendous amount of care and compassion for our nation's veterans with this bill and so many others. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask unanimous consent to place in the record a letter from Senator Tillis and Senator Warren expressing the need to address the issue of these orphan VA loans. I urge adoption of this important bipartisan